Hello, bonjour. So this is Dr. Amig, your host for Unabridged MD. And Unabridged MD in rheumatology is now open in Denver, Colorado. We are accepting our first patient in exactly a week and a half. So come on the schedule. This is the first direct care rheumatology practice. I'm very excited to have you. If you are looking for rheumatologists that cares deeply, and if you want to get to full remission as fast as possible, I am your rheumatologist. I care for you, and we will get there. So unabridgedmd.com. And thank you so much for being on the second episode of the year of Unabridged MD podcast. And I have a wonderful guest today. So Dr. Anne Huntington is a wonderful colleague that I've had the pleasure to meet very recently at a retreat with a lot of other women physicians. And when I learned about what she's offering in terms of a business into the world, I was fascinated, and I'm extremely excited to have her. And she's going to actually introduce herself. And we're going to learn so much about essential oils. And just so that you know, this is not medical advice, and this is just a wonderful discussion between two physicians that are open to new practices and new things. All right, Anne, why don't you introduce yourself? I had everything on my computer, but it's now hidden, so I cannot. Tell us more about you and about your journey.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Amik, for having me. I'm so happy to be here. Well, as she said, I'm Anne Huntington. I am an internal medicine trained hospitalist physician right now. And I trained at large academic medical center and then internal medicine residency training. And then I came back home after my residency training to where I grew up and am part of a large health system community program with several tertiary care centers. My journey has been, in the Western medicine realm of really being involved in quality. I was a quality chair, led a quality initiative for hypertension years ago, in peer review, in credentials and privileging. So a lot of different medical staff leadership positions. And then during the pandemic, I was actually a medical director of a very large hospital medicine physician group, over 50 physicians at 2 tertiary care hospitals. And we have about 15 plus advanced practice providers as well in our group. And we went through the pandemic together and through the COVID surges and really some difficult times for our group, but we made it through together. We actually pulled together 90 extra shifts per month in addition to what we were regularly scheduled to do for about 6 months to be able to really take good, safe care of our patients during that time. And it was a very challenging time, but I learned a lot and went through that well. My journey through kind of integrative medicine started when I had my outpatient practice. And I was always really interested in people's lifestyles and in, how they were eating and how they were exercising and resting and what they were taking into their bodies. And I really learned a lot from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, went to their conferences, and then I was always curious about some of the supplements my patients were taking. Mm-hmm. I was trying to be open as a physician. I wasn't trained in any of them. I would often, comment to them, I don't know what the research shows, or I know that the research doesn't really show a lot for this, but it seems safe. Maybe you can keep taking it, or it doesn't seem safe. I don't know that I can recommend it. I really tried to support them in their journey because I knew that they were searching for answers. And I knew that, potentially if I wasn't able to build a bridge with them and really help support them in their journey, they were going to seek their care elsewhere, which some did, especially initially. As that time went on, and I actually got burned out from outpatient medicine and from the conventional way that it was practiced, I felt like I really just didn't have enough time to counsel my patients, to do some health coaching, to really help them get off of unnecessary medications and reduce polypharmacy. And so I ended up leaving my outpatient practice and really dedicated that extra time, not spending on an in-basket or an inbox to really learn more about integrative medicine. And so I spent a lot of that time in the last few years doing that. And then more recently, a few years ago, in that journey, I was very open and learning and educating myself. And for whatever reason, when my kids were, kind of had a cough and congestion one night, as they often do in the winter months, one of my sons often will cough for hours and really be uncomfortable, won't sleep well, and then he's, sick for a few days.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was self-limited. I knew he would feel better, but I reached out to a friend, and I'm still not sure why I ended up doing this, but I reached out to her who I knew kind of had some essential oils, and I was like, hey, I think, maybe I'll just give this a try. Do you have anything to help? This was brand new to me. I had actually, before this, had a patient who told me she was using essential oils, and I remember just sitting there in the exam room. And she told me that she trusted me, and I just raised an eyebrow, kind of poker face. I raised an eyebrow, and I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I think they maybe cause skin reactions, but I can't really advise you. And that was my only experience with them before.
Yeah.
But my friend sent me home with a kind of a diffuser where you can, put a few drops in of essential oils with the water, and then it kind of vaporizes it into the air. And she sent me home with a few little samples of some essential oils, and I tried it in my kid's bedroom after kind of testing it on myself.
Yeah.
And I had several kids sleeping in there at the same time who were coughing. And it was interesting, within just a few minutes, their congestion subsided. My son's coughing stopped. I was actually in the room watching this happen, kind of went out and checked in on him again. And I was really, really surprised, kind of dubious as well, but really surprised. They slept well that night. They were much better the next morning. The scientist in me, the clinician scientist in me would say, can you reproduce that? Or does it happen with everybody? Was it a one-time thing? Was that your N of one? But it was a really remarkable experience to say, wow, these are biologically active. They actually did something, and I didn't expect that. So that was kind of my first exposure into those.
Wow, that's fascinating. So I think, I had heard of this, that anything that involves your sense of smell is actually, like, there's more memory in your sense of smell than anything else. Like vision has less memory, and that the smell has the most memory. So I'm really, like, I really, like, I kind of have the same approach to things. Like, like, I experienced it personally, like things that before I would have been like, what? Like, would that work? And then you're like experiencing, and you're like, yeah, it's working, and there's no evidence that I know of. And then you start digging and you start finding. So when you started looking at the science behind essential oils, what did you find?
Yeah, great question. It was interesting. I kind of, was most concerned about safety, was my first thought as a physician. Were these safe? I knew that people were using them like crazy, or at least I learned what the market showed. But I wanted to make sure they were safe. And so I was, certainly familiar with what, for example, anesthesiologists do when, pre-anesthetic with anesthesia, and, from that standpoint, similar to aromatherapy. But I really wanted to learn the safety. Oh, go ahead.
Let me pause here. What do they do? Because not everyone knows what anesthesia can do with aromatherapy. What are they doing?
Yeah. So, and I won't make a direct correlation to this, but certainly our sense of smell and the ability to inhale a medication, works for anesthesia. Similarly, aromatherapy can certainly work to, through the sense of smell, through aroma, to affect our brain. And so there's lots of research for that in anesthesia. Anesthesiologists are definitely using these from a postoperative nausea standpoint. And there's, literature on that. And there's, several health systems that are using that for sure. But there's, that was my first exposure, was through that aromatherapy realm. And so I want to make sure, do they cause any problems with the lungs? Do they cause any, what does the topical use do? What does the internal use do? So I really took a deep dive into that. And I learned that in general, they are quite safe, but the quality varies throughout this whole market, this multi-billion-dollar market, where everybody seems to be using essential oils. Nobody seems to know how to find the right kind, or find the quality, or find the ones that are closest to, coming right from the plant, being produced, and then coming to your home. So that part was really important to me as well, and I can kind of share some tips on that. And then I wanted to, just make sure that my family was safe if I was going to use them on my family, for myself, and then lastly for any patients that I would, explain these to. So safety was key. Then I started looking at efficacy. Do these really work? If I'm, as a physician, am going to, tell people about these, I have to make sure they work. That's part of my reputation, and that's also part of how I practice medicine. I know that when I give Lasix for somebody in heart failure, they're going to diurese. Almost always.
Lasix is a diuretic, so it makes you pee. So
exactly.
That's when you have heart failure. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So if I'm going to give a diuretic, in general, if their kidney function is right, and if it's a appropriate dose, then they will diurese, or they will be able to urinate out that extra fluid. I've done that thousands of times. So I wanted to make sure that when I, was going to use these, they would actually do something. So that was the kind of the second component after safety, was efficacy. And then, there's other considerations that I wanted to make sure, some of the environmental considerations. Is this harming the environment by producing these? What are the societal considerations for the people who produce these? Are they produced on a, big factory farm, or kind of a commercial farm, or are they produced with, small growers, in developing countries? What are those concerns? And so I wanted to kind of look at the full spectrum, because that's what I do as an internist. I look at the big picture, and I really want to see inside and out. Is this something that is really a new tool? And that's what I really discovered. This was an additional tool, not the only tool, but an additional integrative tool from all the other tools that I had learned to be able to help people improve their health and really, their well-being, their sense of well-being.
Yeah, this is really good. So you found that there is a lot of them are safe. You found that some are efficient, and what you also found was that there is a wide variety of quality out there.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And you mentioned that you had some tips to find qualities, but I want to kind of backtrack a little bit, which is that, so when do you recommend not a medical advice, right? But just in general, are you one of those persons, and I am one of those, and I'm going to talk about this very soon, that uses aromatherapy sort of on not all of the time, but regularly on a daily basis, or at least a weekly basis? Like what would be something that you say, hey, use this if when just to make you to have peace, or to ground yourself and to get relaxed? Is there some aroma that you would recommend? Like, is lavender? I think I've heard of lavender.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I guess I would say I'm not a super heavy essential oil user compared with some people. There are some folks who I think use it too often. Whether they diffuse it all day long and they use it all over their body, and they might take a lot of them internally, and the body still has to metabolize those. They still have to pass through, depending on the way that you use them. Sometimes the liver, the kidneys, so you have to take that into account depending on people's medical history and what other, things they're taking. But I would say that I know how to use them to get the effects that I want, in addition to, exercise and eating super healthy, whole food, plant-based diet and sleep and all of those other things that I use. So it's not my, number one go-to all the time, but it depends on what it is. Lavender, I would say, is probably the most common essential oil that people have heard of and that people use. There's over 1,000 studies, research studies on it. And it's very well studied. It's very well known to be, in general, quite safe. There's very few reactions to it from different people. You can use it in a diffuser or some other aromatherapy type device. I actually have it right here. And you can kind of just open the bottle and inhale the aroma. It's very calming. And that is from, the chemical constituents that are in lavender. You can use it on the skin for different things. And sometimes even people use them over a bug bite or a sting.
Mhm.
That can help provide some soothing. And then some people use them even for cooking. Lavender can even
Oh,
be added to some citrus oils in different recipes, and a little bit goes a long way. So you have to be careful. But it's pretty versatile, and that's probably a good go-to for people who are just starting out.
yeah. I'm really, when you're talking about all of those scents, I always think of where I come from, which is Corsica in France. I mean, my family is coming from there. And there's so much good smell, right? Literally every time I land, like you land. So now it's from the US. I land from the US to Corsica. Before it used to be from the continent of, France mainland to this island in Corsica. But I remember like just being happy, like just like, oh, this is my childhood smell.
Mhm.
And like I'm thinking of lavender because that's really my childhood smell in the south of France. And then in Corsica, there's something called Immortal, which has a very specific smell, and it's just, oh my gosh, I love it so much. And it makes me happy and calm, and it puts me in this state of just vacation, but in a good way. I don't know how to explain this. And so I'm just wondering, is the fact that we're using essential oils just a way for us to get access to the smells that, because we're not walking and spending time in nature, we kind of are longing for? Would you think that that's the reason why it may work on some people? Like, why do you think it works?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And I love, hearing you talk about France, because France is actually one of the places that lavender is produced and grown. It's one of the places in the world where it grows the best. So you mentioned, that smell is, can be very powerful for our memories. I still remember certain smells that I had as a child,
Yeah.
and they weren't essential oils, but other smells that I had as a child. And whenever I smell that or something similar to that, it triggers that memory, which is, it's so powerful in our brain. Um, there's certainly, many people that use, different smells to evoke certain emotions, the smells of cookies that have just come out of the oven, or the smell of bread that is freshly baked, for
Yes.
example. We love those smells, and those bring back memories of, childhood, or of time with family, or of different events or things like that. And those can be so powerful and uplifting to our brains. There is research certainly on people that are, out in nature in the forest, for example, and some of the forest oils, so
Mhm.
from different trees, from the barks of different trees and the needles, can be very, very soothing. And there's chemical constituents in there that can be very soothing. And so
Mhm.
when you potentially diffuse some of that, that can have a similar effect. I won't say that it's the same as being out in nature, for sure.
Wow.
There's nothing like being out there and being calming, but it can have a benefit to potentially reduce our stress a little bit,
Yeah.
calm us down a little bit, and help us feel a sense of well-being.
Wow. Yeah, sorry. I'm just like you put me back into a forest and then like Corsica, like, and I was just like, oh, I need to get out.
It's hard
And
to be cooped up in the winter, isn't it? We're kind
yeah,
of inside, and
it's funny because I was literally realizing that recently, and I was like, I'm feeling so down. I'm feeling so like, with winter, I don't go outside as much, and I'm trying to build a business, so I'm at home a lot and working a lot on the business. And I remember being like, why am I sad? Like I'm really happy. Normally I'm a happy person. And someone mentioned like you haven't gone outside for a long time. And I was like,
yep,
oh wow. And it's funny because the tree, the Christmas tree, I like to have them cut, so real, because of that smell.
yes,
So it's really like, again, when I met you and you told me what you were creating, and we're going to talk about what you created. I'm very interested because I do think that there is clearly an association between how we feel and the smells, and really all the senses, really. But I think the smell is one that we don't think about. It just happens, right? So we don't necessarily think about. And just okay, I needed to share this because I'm so happy. So for those who are watching the YouTube videos and that have seen me before, right? I'm normally blonde. So I went to my hairdresser, and because I'm changing, it's 2023, like we made it red. I mean, sort of red. It's not red. And anyway, so he starts like using a shampoo. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like it smells so good. What is it? So it was like, oh, it's Kerastase. It's a mark. I don't know, I don't have any association with them. But anyway, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna buy the shampoo because it smells too good. So I buy the shampoo, and he gave me a candle. And I don't know what it is. Unfortunately, they didn't write what it is inside, which is very sad, but it brought me into this good place of happiness and joy and just being content. That's really the word, content. And I was just like, I just needed the smell of something to be happy. And that really is surprising to me, but at the same time, so excellent and so wonderful, because I like, yeah, this is great. It's a good surrogate until I can get out, until
Right.
there's more,
You can keep going back to it often. Yeah.
yeah. No, I think what's really interesting is that you clearly are much more, what's the word? Like for me, smells happen. They just happen. And then sometimes I'll be like, oh, I really like the smell of this shampoo, right? Or of this candle, but I'm not seeking them, and I don't know really much about them. And so I'm really excited about the course. So I would love for you to talk about this. But yeah, I'm realizing that I don't know anything about them. They just happen. So I think this is a great time to hear about your course. And before you tell us about your course, I'd like you to tell us what you like. Why did you decide to do this? Or maybe you can tell us the whole thing, but why did you decide to create a course, and why did you decide to give it to who you're giving it to, and what are you trying to offer, really? What's the value? Because clearly there is so many values out there for essential oils.
Yeah. Well, I'll share that in a little bit of my journey, part of that, and then a couple of experiences that I had through this journey. As I learned that essential oils had power, and I learned that they, in general, were safe, and sometimes there are situations where you don't want to use them. And I really didn't feel like I had a good source for truth. In a lot of that, I was kind of doing a lot of my own research. It took a really long time. It took actually years to come to this point of comfort and of really feeling like I could share with other people. Through this journey, I learned a lot about the direct sales industry and about a lot of the companies that sell these, and a lot of the claims that are made sometimes when they're saying, oh, it's going to fix this, and oh, it's going to fix that. And the clinician, scientist, and physician in me is saying, are you sure? Are you sure you can say that? And are you sure you can reproduce that? And are you sure that's going to work for a wide variety of people? Just the way that we read research studies. And a lot of people were well-intentioned, but not well-studied. And so they were still, some were helping people and some were getting people, to have good results. But I wanted, consistency, and I wanted safety, and I really wanted to, and I understood that the field is very polarizing, that some people love them and say that they work for everything. And then some, like many physicians, say, oh, they're snake oil, and, you're just, they don't work, or they don't do anything, or they're not safe. And so part of my journey was that I was super busy in the pandemic and was just really focused on protecting my team and on taking care of patients. Part of my journey was that I was nervous about sharing this because I knew that there were strong thoughts about it. But ultimately, I had a kind of heard a story in which someone had tried to use essential oils, kind of a regular essential oil user. They were not a physician. And this person had chest pain one day, and this person was trying to use her essential oils to treat her chest pain, and delayed calling 911 to get medical care, and unfortunately passed away en route to the hospital, probably from a STEMI, or probably from a heart attack or some other life-threatening situation, maybe it was a blood clot in her lungs or something like that, but she passed away and never made it. The question is, would she have made it? Either way, we don't know. But her belief in these was such that she thought they could work for everything, I think, or maybe she didn't know how serious her condition was. And when I heard that, this was not somebody related to me or that I was affiliated with, but I realized, I think there's a way that I can help in a way that many others can't as a physician, that I can really help balance both sides, balance the communication, balance the education with these are integrative tools, and there's still a need for Western medicine or conventional medicine, whatever you want to call it. There's still a need for medications, for procedures in certain situations to save lives, and I see that every day in my hospital job. But then I also had another situation where I had a patient with chronic, kind of bowel issues, and actually had a diagnosis and had been treated with pharmaceuticals, with medication to control that, but still had some residual symptoms. And this was kind of a gastrointestinal situation where she had some cramping and some loose stools on occasion, and really, suffered from those symptoms long term. And she did the research on her own. She got some education, created kind of her own blend of essential oils, and would use them topically over her belly, which sounded weird to me at first, but I know that it does work in certain situations. She used them topically and was able to control some of that cramping, some of those loose stools, some of those situations, to the point that she felt better than she had in years. So that was another, situation I had seen where I was like, well, there's a purpose for these in a way that maybe there isn't another tool that can help, and it improved her well-being, it improved her life. So from those situations and many more, I realized I could use my skill set, my ability to read research articles, my ability to take my experience and my expertise and couple it with, many of the traditional uses and the historical knowledge of these. They've been around for millennia, for thousands of years in many different civilizations, and, pull them together to educate people. So as I gain more confidence and more experience with these, I really realized that I wanted to teach my colleagues. I wanted to teach other physicians who were, maybe open a little bit and were concerned about the safety or where to find the right quality or how to use them in a safe manner, and how to get results with them. And so that's where I built a course that is called the Evidence-Based Approach to Essential Oils. It's a continuing medical education course for physicians. Pharmacists can join, and it'll be really a review of the literature, of the research on some of the most common essential oils and the most common uses, on how to find the highest quality and what testing is required, how to, look for adulteration and contamination and what that may mean, and really, how to help people get results, but also be safe. And so we'll talk about, different populations in kids, in elderly, in pregnant women, in, different certain situations, and really empower and educate physicians on this. Many of them are already using some of them, but they want to know more. Many of them have never used them, and some of them may even, who take the course may even think, oh, they're just snake oil, but I'm kind of curious, or I might be a little bit open. So I'm really excited to share this with people, and I know that there's a lot of people that are just interested.
Yeah. And is this online? Is it in person? Like, how long does it last? And where can we find this course? What's the email? And then I'll put it in the footnote, of course.
Yeah. So this is a virtual course, and it will be starting in a couple of weeks. We'll have, several different cohorts, and I will provide a live Q&A opportunity for folks who are taking the course to be able to ask additional questions and seek additional answers. And it will be, you can find it on my website, www.givemorenaturally.com. My company is Give More Naturally. The idea is to give more tools for better health, and to ultimately provide more hope for people. But I'm happy to, certainly learn more. You can reach out to me at support@givemorenaturally.com, and certainly ask more questions about the course. there's information on the website with some FAQs as well.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, yeah, I think this wraps up our episode today. I'm so excited. I'm actually really interested in taking this course. I think it's definitely a different type of word than the one that we are learning when we go to medical school. And despite me doing 2 training in rheumatology and internal medicine, I've never learned anything about essential oils. So I'm actually very excited about this course. So again, this was Dr. Ann Huntington, and she's offering a course that's for now is just for physician, providers, and pharmacists. And you can find her at givemorenaturally.com. givemorenaturally.com. You can also look at the footnote of the episode. And so, yeah, again, I'm Dr. Isabelle Amig from Unabridged MD. Dr. Huntington, it was such a pleasure to have you on the show. And I hope you consider coming back and teaching us even more. And for the rest of you, if you are looking for a rheumatologist, and if you're in the area of Denver, Colorado, or Colorado at large, well, I'm open, and this is the first direct care rheumatology that there is in Colorado, and I'm very excited to offer you the best care there is. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.